Welcome! This video contains an introduction, an interview so you can gain deeper understanding of the subject from spirit level, and a group frequency calibration so you can start to clear the frequency distortion patterns around this topic. Enjoy! Hi everyone, my name is Karen Cheong and I'm here with my co-host Dennis Kelly. Today we're going to be talking about the 0 point. In our culture, there is a reverence for the lightness and a fear of the darkness. It's embedded in our culture and reinforced by our religions. Even the words themselves conjure up things that we want: lightness, happiness, joy, and things that we don't want: darkness, despair, grief. If we could start to see these two things for what they truly are, void of human judgment, we can begin to master them and move towards what I call the 0 point. So let's jump right in. Dennis?
Well, Karen, thank you for this opportunity to visit. This is one of those subjects that as soon as I hear it, my mind so I'm really looking forward to you clarifying exactly what 0 point. Mm-hmm. I don't have any historical place to go to figure out what is 0 point.
Yeah.
I see you hold your hands up and talk about it, but I need a few words to go with the hands, okay?
Okay. I'll do my best.
Okay.
Okay. So the 0 point is the point which is the center point between the light and the dark. Okay? And it's the point of neutrality that we want to access. So it's not, and I'd like to just clarify that so imagine instead of a point, actually like a triangle or a pyramid, if you prefer 3 dimensions. So imagine a pyramid like this, right? Yep. The 0 point actually is, so if you imagine darkness on one side and the brilliance on another, okay, so on these two sides, it's the point that sits in the middle of both. And it moves up the pyramid. Does that make sense? So the 0 point isn't static, it moves, okay, as we ascend. So we can have a 0 point at different levels. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we can start with having no work done whatsoever, no awareness, no whatever, and it's going to be at the base of the pyramid because we're just here sort of asleep, right? And so what that means is the 0 point's here in the center, and because it's at the base of the pyramid, the extremes of brilliance to dark is much greater than as you ascend in your own consciousness, right? Because you're removing all the distortion patterns, you're ascending, right? Because your vibration is getting clearer and higher, you are ascending. And so what happens is the extremes of the brilliance and to the darkness gets narrower as you move up. Does that make sense? So that sorry, so I'm just gonna, wait. Okay, so that means that what your experience is as you ascend is you don't have the same extreme experiences that you would have had at the lower levels because you're ascending in level, okay? And I'll get back to that in a minute.
Okay.
So you had a question, and then I was going to talk about brilliance and darkness, but what's your question?
So, the first thing that came up is, so you mentioned at the beginning that, so you've got kind of the dark and the light.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, for some reason, don't they kind of waver back and forth and just, so you say that, okay, here's this this point, and dark, light. So energetically, is that how it is? Does that make any sense?
Well, I think I see what you're saying. So it's a spectrum, right? So it's a spectrum from darkness to light.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously very dark, grading up towards light. Right, so in the very center point is exactly that middle.
So there is a point.
That's the middle between
the very point.
Yeah, between the darkness and the brilliance. And what I mean by that, so let me just explain the darkness and the brilliance.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the brilliance is the thing that for most people who are seeking, they want, right? Because we always want the light. We always think that that's the good part, where angels sing, where it's like, rainbows and fluffy unicorns and good things, right? Joy, bliss, and I'm kind of poking fun, but at the same time, it's a thing that we crave because we think that that's what awakening is. We all want the light. So that is an important aspect, and because we are here in this density, there is also the darkness, because it's a spectrum. The darkness, it can be density, form of the earth, right? Because it's no longer just energy or brilliance, it's actually taken on form. So therefore it has, and I mean void of evil and good, okay? So just has density, has form.
Yep.
And then as you go further and further along these spectrums, the brilliance at its most extreme is like not embodied. Okay, like you would actually pop out of your body if you were at that extreme of brilliance, because it can't sustain that level of density. At the very, very, very other end of the spectrum, it's like very dense, very dark. It can have what we would consider to be, elements of, things that want to control or oppress and that type of thing. That's the darkness. Okay, and so I'm going to explain a little bit more about the characteristics of both. Okay, so the brilliance does not need us to sustain itself. No. It's just brilliant in and of itself. It doesn't require form in which, because at its most extreme, there is no form, because it's just brilliance. It's just the light, the light, the light, the light, the light. There is no form, it's just light. On the other end of the spectrum, things that are needing to oppress or to control, or things from the darkness, they need form in order to sustain themselves, because they need energy. They need energy or to continue to sustain themselves. They need to feed on something.
They're not
to sustain them.
self-sustaining.
Correct.
They need something.
They need another energetic force to feed on in order to sustain.
They need a life force.
Correct. They need a life force.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Preferably in a body, because then they can feed on it. And it's kind of like a spider. Like they don't necessarily kill their prey right away. They wrap it up and they keep you living for a while, because they want the blood, right, of the insect. It's the food source. So the darkness also needs a food source, which is our life force, our chi, right? Or what the Chinese would have called chi, or the Japanese called ki, right? This vital life force that runs through us in order to sustain, because they have form, right? Whereas the brilliance doesn't have that. So those are the two extremes. The 0 point is the middle point between these two. Okay, it's a point of neutrality. So it's the point where if you inhabit this point, you accept the extreme of the brilliance and you accept the extreme of the darkness. It doesn't mean that you get seduced by it, that you are motivated by it, that you join it in any way. You just accept it. It's there. It's part of your reality. It's just there. And what happens is, as we remove our distortion patterns and we ascend, so here's again that triangle, right? So instead of this base part where you can see the base is wider, you start to move up, right? Because now you've removed distortions and you're rising. So your vibrational level gets higher and higher. So what happens then, as that happens, right? You have, because you've jumped levels yourself in that 0 point, in that point of neutrality between both the darkness and the light, what you can experience is more of a higher order. So meaning, like if at this level, down here, right, at the 0 point, you would have experienced abuse of self, okay? You abused yourself in some way, right? Because you're just like, you entered relationships that weren't good for you, or you sacrificed self a lot, or whatever.
I drank too much,
or smoked, or didn't eat, right? So in the next level, what happens is like, well, you don't do that anymore because you don't need to. You've already experienced all that stuff. You're done, right? You've kind of ascended. So now it's like, okay, well, perhaps, for example, you clean up your diet. Because you're like, okay, well, now I don't need to tolerate this kind of food because it doesn't make me feel good, right? And so you don't even, that's not, right? The whole, lots of alcohol, lots of drugs, lots of whatever, is not even an issue for you anymore because you've risen in your vibrational level. So now it becomes diet. Then perhaps it might become like abundance or money. Like you won't experience low levels of, you will never become homeless or whatever, because you don't need to experience. Do you see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's, as you rise up, what you experience changes in terms of what you will tolerate.
Is it almost like you become more refined?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You become more refined.
I got one word right.
Okay.
So, but I could sense that and feel that is, it's just that, like during that.
Yes, it's a refinement, like alchemy, basically. Yeah.
So the audience, maybe this is the first time they've heard this concept. Yes. So kind of going all the way back. So during my journey, during my life, I'm going to float. Yeah. Light, dark, light, and along the spectrum.
Yes.
But what you're saying is that 0 point, it's like
Yes.
It's like the portal. It's like...
Yes, you want to get to that point. So no matter what level you're at, okay, you want to get to that 0 point of whatever level you're at. And the reason is because then you've sort of learned the lesson of the extremes. You can actually bridge those extremes, and you're neutral because you've accepted them. And then now you have the opportunity to move up, and in refinement in terms of your experience. And it gets finer and finer and finer, and the path gets narrower and narrower because you're moving towards this apex. Eventually, what happens when you get to the apex is you master and transcend both lightness and dark. There is that point. So it's about, not about that. It's not like there's a goal or anything.
That's kind of the ultimate, though. I mean,
it's sort of, well, then it flips, okay, and then there's another triangle this way, which then, okay, so imagine a triangle this way, and then an inverted triangle on top of it. Then you go into the infinite, which is the spirit realm, right? You start to go really into the spirit realm, because, yes, so it's. Does that make sense to you? Because now you've transcended the very polarized world that we live in, the duality, essentially. Yeah.
So, if I come to you and you know, this concept is fairly new, and so, but I seem to kind of understand what you're talking about, but I'm really not quite sure where I'm at. Can you sense that in a person? Can you?
Yes.
Can you?
Yeah. Yeah, and most people who are beginning tend to be on the lower, right? And they can move quickly to the 0 point, you know, with enough work. They can move here, and they start to move up. And the reason you care about this, like why do we care, right? Why do we care about the 0 point? Well, some people don't, and that's fine. Some people who are seekers, who want to move and accelerate upwards in terms of their awakening, what happens is that your experience in the world shifts, because as you refine yourself, as you move up, your experience gets better and better and better and better, in the sense that you no longer need to learn the lower lessons anymore, right? So, as I say, like those addiction patterns don't exist for you anymore. Then perhaps you clean up your diet, so then now your physical body feels better, and now money doesn't become an issue, and then now the low self-worth is not an issue, so your career changes. And that, you see what I'm saying? So every moment, every step you take, every layer you jump, means that you no longer need to experience. You've already done it. It's like the difference between the person who has to forage for food and the person who is clean, has a Rolls Royce. It's just not even like they don't have the same concerns. It's not even like a different world. It's not even the same world. Like totally different experience.
So it's almost like my concerns as a first grader.
Yes.
As I elevate and grow, and in this case, in frequency vibration, is my needs and my desires, and everything changes.
Exactly.
Naturally.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you have a more refined experience. And what I will also say about the 0 point, if you choose to take this as a path and you want to, okay, I want to neutralize and move up in these layers, what happens is the path gets narrower, because you have more experience and more knowledge of both extremes. So if you deviate into the darkness, for example, you get seduced, okay? And so an example of that, okay, so you've risen this high, and for example, and then the darkness comes in and says, ooh, I know you want to accelerate, so why don't you just give me a piece of your soul to do that? Come here. You wanna jump a couple levels? I can help you jump a couple levels. And then you're like, okay, right? That'll be faster. Like, I really want to accelerate, so that'll be faster. So then you sell a piece of your soul. Okay, that is a much higher consequence. We don't realize it in our physical bodies. The spirit consequence of that is so much greater than something that might happen at the lower level of like needing money or something like this. Because on a spirit level, that's like like the consequence of that is like infinite, into your infinite beingness, as opposed to like, I'm struggling for money now, which is resolvable. It's
it's almost like the stakes get higher.
Stakes get way higher
as you go.
Yep.
I couldn't help it, and this will date me, but Pac-Man. It's almost like, okay, I found the 0 point, so I move up. Yeah. And now, do I go to the dark or go to the light? Boom, if I kind of sell my soul, and then, and so, but just that, the dimensions of that, it's kind of with the spectrum and with the upward movement and the frequencies and vibrations getting higher and stronger. Yeah. But the game becomes, maybe more serious or just...
Yeah, and the stakes get higher, because what happens is as we ascend, right, we get more and more brilliant.
naturally, because we've released the distortion patterns. So we're returning as we become, and what all that means is that you've released your distortion patterns, so you're more in awareness of your connection to pure source. Pure source, yes. You claim your own brilliance. You recognize your own connection to pure source. You're aware of it. You're like glowing pure source or radiating pure source effortlessly, because there's no distortions, right? Or fewer of them, let's just say. So now you become a very valuable energy source. Because look, there you are. Look at all that. It's like a nutrient dense morsel, right? So you have, say, it's not like an empty calorie. It's like a nutrient dense morsel, and the darkness is like, ooh, I'd like some of that. That's a very, very charged, a lot of energy there for me, not me, but if you were the darkness, for the darkness as an energy source. Yeah. So does that make sense? That's why the stakes get higher, because they're like, okay, I kind of want that thing. So there can be more seduction, more,
your value on the black market. On the dark market goes up.
On the dark market goes up. Yeah.
Goes up. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. It's like having.
This is a bigger prize.
Yeah. It's kind of like eating lobster versus macaroni salad. You know what I mean? You kind of want the lobster. Well, I know you're assuming you're into lobster, but you know what I mean. Or like a really nice piece of steak or whatever it is. You know, on the buffet.
Can I just kind of bring us back?
Sure.
So. Fascinating subject, but now the audience is listening, and how do they relate to all this? And so how do I, what do I do with this? It's and I'm thinking the key is awareness, is being aware of the concept, being aware of the fact that this is how energy, frequency, vibration, this is kind of the name of the game.
Yeah, because ultimately it's all about the pyramid, right? It's like, so wherever you fall, so your experience here on this reality is you're discovering darkness and light, this spectrum, right? You as you say, we're going back and forth in our life where we can experience this, and some of us have much more range than others. Some of us, you're just like, wow, that is incredibly dark, this person's existence. Wow, right? And then they'll also experience extreme brightness sometimes, but it's so jarring for them, and it can rip the fabric of their lives apart. So to get to neutrality, why people care is, again, your experience as you just do the work. Naturally, your experience will be, you will rise up, and so therefore your experience will be more refined. Okay, so just like I said, the concerns that you have down here will just be addressed as you learn these lessons, and you stop having to deal with those things. The other thing is that once you gain neutrality, okay, so the 0 point is also about neutrality. It's a moving neutrality point. Okay, so once you experience the neutrality at that level, it's this growing, expanding sense of peace as you move up, because what you're at peace with expands because you're ascending, right? So what you're able to bridge gets broader. Does that make sense? Because you're ascending, because you're experiencing this and you're accepting each of this as you go along, and you're holding the middle ground and removing the distortion patterns, right? And not. So the light doesn't try to seduce us. It's seductive to us because we think we want it. Like, we chase the light, thinking, oh, we want the light. And so the light is spectacular, right? If you go into the light, into that brilliance, that extreme brilliance, without any grounding in the density, you will pop out of your body, because the light cannot sustain at that extreme. It doesn't have density. It doesn't have form. So you will disintegrate, like literally, like you will either commit suicide, some horrible accident will befall you, you will get really sick and die, like something, you will pop out of your body in some way, shape or form. So, or go insane, whatever that happens. But you'll be, because again, that level of brilliance can't sustain density. There is none there. So it's really important, if you want to experience light, to also have the experience, the grounding of density, okay, and an acceptance of the darkness. I'm not saying be seduced by the darkness, to do the darkness's bidding, to like fall in line with the darkness. I'm not saying any of that, but to accept it. Like, there is darkness in our world, there is, and it's within us too. Like, if you were being threatened, if someone you loved was being threatened, you probably would kill them if you had to. It's within us. If someone you truly love was being threatened, the only way to save them was to kill the person who was about to kill them. Like, you probably would do it. A lot of us do. That is dark within us. We have that ability. It's in us. I'm not saying you act on it, but it's there. So to accept that, to accept that level of darkness, and to see it and not be overly overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
That last little segment there, kind of, so within us, there is that light and that dark.
Yeah, we're human.
And so is it kind of that middle road?
Yes. So yes, the middle road, because that's acceptance of both.
Yeah.
All the love and the amazingness
Yeah.
that we are.
Yeah.
And we can be, like, humans can be incredibly cruel.
Yeah.
I mean, there's cruelty within us, tremendous cruelty. You see it around you. There probably have been instances in your life where we have been cruel.
Yeah.
And you're like, oof, it's not great. I mean, I don't want to dwell there. I don't want to do that anymore, but it's there,
How would all this conversation relate to a GFC?
Oh.
I mean, is it,
Yeah. So the more GFCs you do, and the more work that you do, frequency work, whether it's individual or if it's a GFC, what happens is you just clear. So you're clearing distortion patterns. So what happens is, naturally, as a consequence, you move towards the neutral point on any level, and then you start to rise. So the more you can remove in terms of your distortions, it just facilitates this process. So it makes it much faster. So you can do it in your lifetime on your own, of course. I mean, you don't need to do this work.
Yeah.
But if you do this work, it's way faster. So that means that it accelerates you getting to the 0 point in the first place, and then moving up this path much more quickly in a single lifetime, as opposed to over many, many lifetimes. So that's how you do it. So the more you expose yourself to frequency work and removing the distortion patterns, that's what happens. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, Karen, that was amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Karen, could you help me? I hear so often when I look at your video or your website, GFC. Exactly what is that?
A GFC is a group frequency calibration, which looks a lot like a guided meditation on a particular topic. And what I'm doing is I'm helping you to remove the distortion patterns of that particular topic. And because you're coming together as a mastermind in a group to connect to pure source even more and to clear the distortion patterns of this particular topic, what happens is a tremendous amount of momentum starts to happen because of the energetic of the entire group, and each individual is able to move faster and ascend higher than they could have on their own.
Welcome, everyone. This is the group frequency calibration on moving towards the 0 point. So let's begin by taking 3 breaths in to the heart space, please. Taking a deep breath in, holding it for at least 2 to 3 seconds, before exhaling all the air out of your lungs and holding out your exhaled breath for 2 to 3 seconds. And on your second breath, please inhale and hold your breath in for 1 to 2 seconds longer than you did your previous breath. And whenever you're complete with your hold, at your own time, please exhale all the air out of your lungs and hold out your exhaled breath for the same length of time that you held your inhaled breath for. And on your third breath, please inhale all the air into your lungs, holding it for as long as you possibly can. And when you feel like you can't hold your breath any longer, please hold your breath for a split second longer. And whenever you're ready, please exhale all the air out of your lungs and hold out your exhaled breath for as long as you possibly can. And when you feel like you can't hold out your exhaled breath for any longer, please hold it out for a split second longer. And we're stretching what is possible, not only on the spirit realm, but also in your physical body. Good. And whenever you're complete with those 3 breaths, please bring your awareness, focus, attention to the space between your heart and your throat. When I mean your heart space, I mean that's not your physical heart, but actually the space in the center of your chest, in your nipple line. Between that and the top of your throat. Okay, you can just breathe regularly as you focus or bring your attention to this space or imagine it. And as I'm waiting for the mastermind to gel, please note that I'm working on you at the group and the subgroup level. And please also note that I'll be making sound on my end. So you'll likely will hear me either exhale sharply, or you might hear me hum, or you might hear me yawn. And that is just how I currently move the distortion patterns or move the frequencies around. It likely will change, but that's how it works at the current moment. So I invite you to use this as an opportunity to strengthen your own focus. Good. So now, continuing to breathe from your heart space to the top of your throat. Let's connect even more to Pure Source by asking the following question to ourselves in our own minds. And that question is, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to Pure Source? And that question again is, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to Pure Source? And as you ask that question, please imagine, see, sense, feel, or become aware of a brilliance deep, deep within your body that becomes more expansive, becomes brighter, and even more radiant. As you become even more aware of your connection only to Pure Source, and on my end, I'm working on the back end to expand or increase your natural bandwidth. Excellent. Nice. So now please bring your attention, focus, awareness to the lower back part of your skull and the back part of your neck. Okay, so all the way up the back of your neck, all the way up to that bumpy part on the back of your head called the occiput. So that entire area. Okay. Breathing regularly. Okay. So the first distortion pattern that we're going to release is that of the fear of letting go. Okay, and you don't even really know what you're letting go of yet, but really you're about to let go of a lot of lineage patterns and distortions and that type of thing. But there's a fear of that for most of you on the subconscious level, because it's familiar to you and known, and so therefore provides a sense of safety, even though it's not necessarily desirable. So that's why many of us stay in situations we don't want to be in, even though they're not serving us, because at least it's familiar to us, right? It's why people don't leave bad relationships and stuff, and so on. One of the reasons, anyway. So, in any case, please continue to focus on the back of your neck and the back of your lower skull as we remove this. As much as you may have been asking for this change, it is still unknown, uncharted territory for the vast majority of you. And as a note, if I say something that really resonates with you, then it's likely you. If I say something that you sort of viscerally react against, it's likely you too. So I invite you to be open to that possibility and to explore it. Good. So now, if you could please imagine, see, sense, feel, or become aware of the spot on your spine behind your heart. So if you were to draw a line from your heart to your spine, right there. And of course, I mean the shortest line to the back of your spine. All right, so this is the beginning of the release of the family distortion patterns or the lineage patterns that are wrapping a lot of you, or many of you, in drama and distraction, so that you don't really focus on this point. So you don't come into this point of neutrality and stillness. Okay, it's a lot of distraction, a lot of drama, that type of thing. And if you're focused on that all the time, then you don't focus on the path to the 0 point or coming into the 0 point. It's difficult because we're so consumed with this other input, let's call it that. So let's remove this as much as we can. So of course there are many layers to family dynamics, but this is specifically regarding getting to this point of stillness and neutrality. And it's the very beginning for most of you. So all you have to do is breathe into that point in your spine right behind your heart. Good. So now if you could please bring your attention, focus, awareness to your heart space in the center of your chest in your nipple line, or imagine your heart space. Okay. So this is the distortion pattern of fear or resistance, depending on what subgroup you're in. Okay. And this is fear or resistance of or to the 0 point. It's very uncharted territory for most people and most of you on this call. And so there's the natural human resistance to the unknown. So please focus on your heart space. So by removing this, of course, it's easier to approach the 0 point if you're not afraid of it or resisting it on some level. So as we start to inhabit this space more, everything starts to shift from our reality to our reaction to it, to the people we hang out with. So for some, it's a subtle shift, just in perception. For others, it's more of a physical shift that is more pronounced. It is reorganization to a higher level of coherence and vibration. But sometimes there needs to be a releasing of density in order to get there. So, continuing, it doesn't matter if you understand that mentally. All you have to do is focus on your heart space. Good. Continuing to keep your focus in your heart space. Now this has to do with the distortion with regards to time. So at the 0 point, you're right in the center of the collective present now. And in that very specific point, it's extremely expanded. However, many of you struggle with time, and you're not in the collective present now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull us all into the collective present now. So that, first of all, you can be in more ease, and secondly, in your ability to create, because we can only co-create from, and I mean co-create because we're co-creating with the divine. We can only co-create in the collective present now. If you're slightly in the past or slightly in the future, you actually cannot impact your reality very much. So let's move you into this position of, let's call it power. Really, it's your natural state. You've just popped out of your natural ability to co-create because of this time issue. So this might take me a little bit, so I'm going to not speak very much for the next minute or so. All you have to do, whether or not that makes sense to you, is to breathe into your heart space. Good. Now, for some of you, this is going to be, for a distinct subgroup of you, this is going to feel slightly disorienting because you've always been outside of time. Either ahead of it by anywhere from a half a second to 3 seconds, or slightly behind it. In either case, when you're outside of the collective present now, it causes a feeling of anxiety because we're not in our normal or natural position of being able to co-create and influence our reality. So it may feel a little disorienting to you. You will reset though and adapt. Good. And if you feel a little heavy and sleepy, that's totally okay. And if you drift off to sleep as you listen to this, that's totally okay. It just means that the frequency is higher than you're used to, and your spirit is kicking you into your subconscious mind, kicking your active mind out of the way so you can integrate faster. It's actually extremely efficient. So if you fall asleep, that's totally all right. Good. So now, please bring your attention, focus, awareness to, from your heart, all the way up to your throat. So, we're going to drop into the timeless, okay? Because the 0 point in the expanded collective present now drops into the timeless. So, all you have to do is be aware of the space between your heart and your throat. And then I'm going to count so that your mind has something to track. All right? You just listen to the sound of my voice. I'm going to count to 8. So 0, 1. Starting to feel a little more expanded or possibly heavier. Two, bringing us to the edge of time. Three, four, slowing time down. For some of you, you may feel time starting to get very malleable. 5, stretching time even more. 6, pushing us beyond time into the timeless. 7, dropping further into the timeless. 8, if some of you are noticing that you have not breathed for an extended period of time, that is normal. It is called the breathless. And it is an indicator of the timeless, bringing us back. 7, 6, pulling us closer to the edge of time. 5, picking up velocity. 4, crossing the threshold into time. 3, 2, pulling us further in. 1, dropping us back into the collective present now. 0, anchoring you fully back into the collective present now with the experience of the timeless. It's a fantastic place to be for as long as you would like. And I look forward to working with you on the next GFC.